story about the Jaffa, as we all call it down at Dinton White Swan. I'd just done spring-winter campaign film, and I'll level with you, I was kind of a bit, I think we all go through this, I was a bit exhausted by the whole fishing scene. The spring and autumn on Dinton does that to you because you're trying to get an A-teamer. You want to get a result. You want to have you want to make use of the time, and that window is very, very narrow. So when I say time, you've got a couple of months in the spring, and you've got a couple of months around the autumn time. The bits around that, it all gets a bit messy. Summer, it's often too hot, or they're coming off the back of spawning, so the fish aren't in the best of conditions, so then you're waiting for them to kind of be in their best conditions and feeding properly, and that doesn't start until, I suppose, September. And of course you've got your day job as well. So when the time's right and you're trying to work around all those things that I've just said, the big girls are going to come out around about April, May. That's when you're trying to get that result. But I say, like, what I was doing in that spring, during that spring campaign was, like I always do, I started off all right. I had a few bites, everything looked great, and then it started tapering off, as I alluded to in the last film. I'd had a result, I'd had a few fish, and I was really, really chuffed with what was happening, but then I was sort of, I suppose, losing ground to a certain degree to the fish, to the anglers. I was trying to do my bits and concentrating on the areas where, trying to catch the fish where they are used to turning up at that particular time of year. And I was fortunate enough about 3 years ago to have triple roe in the autumn months. And triple's a bit of an interesting character in that he can come out in a number of different areas of the lake. There's others that tend to come out in similar sort of parts of the lake. You might get the odd time where it comes out at one of the bays, but very rare. And one particular fish that is known for coming out in those particular zones where I've been fishing, and I've been concentrating on those areas non-stop, and that was the Jaffa, or son of triple roe. And that is like an obsession for everybody. That is the main one. And when I was coming to the end of spring campaign, at that particular time I was running out of energy. I wanted it to close. I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but it's really hard when you're on a lake and you're waiting for them to spawn, and if you've got a rule like we have at Dinton that as soon as they start spawning it closes for a month, which is great, it's right, it's what we should be doing. But it's hard because you just know that each time you turn up you're thinking to yourself, is it gonna close? Is it going to be this week? It's got to be this week. And it got later and later and later, and the fish over at Black Swan had already started going. So I wrapped up that spring film knowing that I won't get another opportunity next week. This is it, put it up there. And I sort of said at the end of that film, I said, look, if it comes good, I'll let you know, sort of thing. And I suppose this is what this film's about. You may have seen on my post, yeah, I had what I was after, for what I was there for 6 years. It's the obsession for everybody. It's not about the weight of the Jaffa, it's about the fish that it is. It's arguably one of the finest carp to grace this country. It's an incredible fish. It makes it so hard that when you're fishing against other anglers that it's also their obsession. I didn't want to talk about it. I cast my mind back to 6 years ago when I walked White Swan for the very first time, knowing that I was going to get a ticket that year, and I was on the Aitley Car Park Lake, and I walked down the left-hand side of the lake, and lo and behold, I bumped into Mickey Gray, who's an old friend of mine. I hadn't seen him for a few years. In fact, I'd seen him at a funeral not a couple of years before that, so not exactly in the greatest of circumstances. But a great old friend, and somebody that I shared a few beers many moons ago on the Match Lake, which makes us feel very old, but and somebody I've always respected as an angler. When I bumped into him, I said, "Any good?" As you do, you know, to make conversation. He said, "Yeah, I've just had son of triple row," and it was like, "Oh my God, that's the fish I'm joining here for," which I think is what everyone was doing. I think everyone joins for the son of triple row. Even though at the time you still had triple row, you had twin, you've got the other ones that are coming through that are good. You had John's linear, you've got John's common. These are some of the special A-teamers that we're all there to try and outwit. But as usual with Mickey, and still exactly the same to this day, he was chasing his dog because she's always on the lookout for food. So you know, I had a very limited conversation with him. But I left there thinking, oh my God, he's just had the son of triple row, and I think it was about 46 pound he had it at that time, and that's the nature of that fish. It's not about its weight. It's not you know, it's not whatever one that's going to go way above 50. It's proportionately and arguably the finest fish out there, but it hovers around 45, 46 pound, 44, you know, anyway, you know, it's around that sort of weight, so its weight is regardless. But yeah, after finishing that campaign, I still wanted to kind of fish the areas that I got a little bit bored of, because, you know, I worked it quite hard. I felt I'd taken my chances and they were disappearing, and I wasn't getting bites anymore. And it's happened. I said it in the last film. It's like you can get a few bites on one spot and then it dries up for no reason. You know, they just kind of suss it out and think, no, I'm not feeding off it anymore. And you've got to kind of either create something new or hope that you can get something else going. And if you're not seeing fish in that zone, it makes it really hard. And as the temperatures got warmer during the spring, those fish do what they naturally do, and they sort of go from the middle areas of the lake, and they're either going up the car park end or they're going up the as we call it, the top end. And I don't, the car park end, yeah, you get a couple up there, it becomes very busy and almost claustrophobic. So I don't like that. I've always been an angler that likes a little bit of space, and I don't really want to be looking at somebody opposite me, because the lake is like a canal. It's very narrow, and so those fish will do that. They go up and down. And there was a lot grouping up at the top end, and there was a few that were coming out at the car park end. The top end is notorious for doing, don't get me wrong, doing good fish, but tend to be the younger and sometimes smaller fish. And it was doing a few fish down there, and a lot of anglers were going there for a bite, and I decided that I still wanted to kind of concentrate on the middle. And there was somebody else that was doing the middle as well, my mate called Jay. He was working a swim called Jack's that was kind of 1 o'clock to me to where I was when I was in a slope swim. But I had a play up another swim that was called Antisocial, and I wasn't feeling it up there, and I decided to try and prepare something to get myself back into the area, albeit I moved slightly along. So I moved a couple of swims up, and funny enough, it was the last capture where son of triple row come out. And if I'd be honest with you, I didn't expect the son of triple row to come out again. There's a couple of others in there that have been on the missing list. You've got Darren's linear that hasn't come out for 2 years, hasn't been out. John's Lynn hadn't come out elusive anyway. They're both elusive fish, so they're quite hard to target. John's common had come out, and these are the sort of other ones that I wanted. Another mate of mine, Palsy, he had Blue Moon out, but he caught Blue Moon where you'd expect it to come out. He caught it out at a swim called Leroy's up further along the pond, up by the car park end. Fair play to him, good angling, and that fish seems to like that area. So I wasn't in the mix of that fish anyway. I kind of thought that, you know, these are the ones that I wanted, ideally, from the angling that I was doing. So I went and had a look into a swim called Timmy's Trees, and I just had a little play about in there, and lo and behold, the spots that I was fishing, I did really well in an autumn campaign before I couldn't get back into the swim again, which is quite frustrating because I built it up and it was a nice little clay spot, and I managed to find that again whilst I was plumbing. So it's, you know, it's as hard as you can imagine, and there was a load of weed around it as well. So it felt banging, you know. You think lovely, not necessarily one that really likes that sort of spot, but you know that sort of, you know, when you get that cast and it's something out different to the rest of it, and you got weed all around it, it's screaming for a bite. So I decided to put a bit of bait out there, but not much, only a couple of kilo maximum. And then of course I've left and I've come back the following week and realised a mate of mine is in that swim called Welsh Tony, and I completely forgot that Tone was working there. He was doing some stuff in there, and so it was a little bit like, ooh, you know, I forgot that Tone was doing some stuff in there. And that's what happens on there, you know. It's no one owns any swims, I'm not saying that, but sometimes, you know, people are trying to do things when say a swim gets left alone and people are trying to sort of bait it to their advantage. There's no pre-baiting rule, okay, whether you like that or not. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of it, but the fact of the matter is that's in place, and you've got to kind of, you know, if others are doing it, you've got to kind of do it as well to a certain degree, providing you're not interfering with somebody else and baiting a granny out of it with somebody's next door or somebody's opposite. That's just the wrong thing to do. But at that particular time when I was baiting that swim, there was no one opposite me and there's no one to the right of me, so I thought fair dues. And yeah, so I came down the following week, Tone's in that swim, and I honestly, I didn't expect that week to be available to me. I thought it was going to go. I thought the weather looked a little bit warmer. I thought they were going to go, they were going to spawn. But it did. I got another week out of it, so I had another couple of nights I was able to go and do. But as I said at the beginning of this talk, I just was going through the motions because I just thought I need to shut down. I've had enough now. It's just, you know, it's so hard to keep yourself completely motivated when you know it's going to shut down on me at any moment. It's so annoying, it's so hard. But I went into this swim, as I said, into the antisocial or the social area. Had a play about in there. Disastrous, you know. Just you know, I saw one fish showing literally on top of me, and I thought, here we go. Didn't get a bite, nothing. And if I'll be honest, I don't think I deserved the bite. I didn't. Yet my head weren't in it, and I just thought it's just not right. You know, with that, I thought, well, what am I going to do if it stays open? And Tone decided that he wanted to go into a swim called Paul Kids, and he decided to move into there. So I thought, you know, that's interesting. My mate Jay's turned up for his session, and he drives all the way down from Manchester. Fair play to him every week. He's come down. He got down the night before it was time for me to leave, and I told him what I'd done. I said, look, I baited up thingy, but I felt a bit bad because Tony had been in there. But as I said, it was a week before Tony arrived in there, so I didn't kill it for Tony, definitely not. And I don't even know whether he would have been fishing in my area. He rang, as I was packing up, Jay rang me in the morning and said, you ain't gonna believe this, they're boshing all over, the swim. And I thought, that is typical, because that is Dinton, because that's all they ever do is, you know, you could do something, you move out, and they show. Yeah, of course it's lines, isn't it? We know that. The line lay is not a hindrance, it's not a factor, because that's why they're showing, and they do. They're extremely good at knowing when you're there, because if you're there, it's rare you'll get a proper show right on top of you, but they will be behind you, or they will be on the swim up. That's what they're notorious for. But lo and behold, he's telling me this, and he's kept me on the phone, and I'm getting a running commentary, and I thought, right, sod this, I've got to go and have a look. So I walked down there, I was packed up, and he was right, and it was right where I was sort of baiting. And I was fishing quite hard right, or baiting quite hard right. That's where I was intending to angle. And I saw a couple of good sized fish in amongst that, and he was telling me as well, and he said, you want to get yourself in there, you want to get yourself in there. So fair play to him, you know, he did do that. And I thought, well, if it's free next week, I'm going to do that. Anything can change because those fish are going up and down, as I said. But the angling pressure was becoming more and more at the ends, because you're getting bites there. Good mate of mine was doing well, called James, we call him the driver. He had nicked a couple down there. and I knew that, you know, I knew that there was a lot of fish that were coming out around that sort of zone. And yeah, truth be known, you want to mix it, but you want to mix it with catching fish. It's a massive confidence booster, of course it is. But in my head, I just thought the ones I'm after are not going to come out down there. They are going to either sit back away from those males that are chasing the females around there. That's where they're going to get ready to spawn. Normally that's where they're going to be spawning, is that top end. And I know from historically that big girl, Jaffa, Darren's, have usually done a capture just before it's closed. The week that I was, the following week would have been a new moon. So you're kind of thinking, right, you know, I'm going to go in there with a little bit more energy, a little bit more recharge, hoping. So this time I was actually thinking, I'm hoping that it's not going to shut down on me. It's going to be open, and it was open. And I got down there, got in that swim, which I wanted to do. Preconceived ideas, all that, it didn't matter. I knew where they were. They weren't so much at the car park end, but there were a lot down that top end. And I was sitting there with no one around me in the middle of the pond, and I could see on the opposite bank just watching barras going down there, and I'm thinking, well, where the bloody hell are they going? Because there's 4 or 5 in there already, and it was just literally creeping further and further up from the top end, getting more and more around my sort of, well, not my bit because I'm still miles away from all, but you know, they were coming out of the bay, dotting themselves up. And it was busy, it's getting busy, of course it is, and people know that this is their last chance saloon and it's a new moon, and if it's a new moon, and there is definitely something in it. You know, whether that's because loads more anglers go out and they're all angling for fish, I don't know, but it does have a habit of knocking out a big fish. Did it for me with triple row a few years ago. The snake, you get again round a new moon, and you know, you just kind of think any little bit of confidence you can get, that'll do me. I'd done a night already down there, and I nothing special, just found my spots with ease, lovely, very, very clean, perfect, very hard, looked like they'd been turned over very well. So I wanted to fish rigs in accordance to kind of the bottom that I was fishing. I had one that was on a rig, traditional sort of Ronnie rig, very close to the bottom, so you're losing the bottom ring on the hook piece itself. Big inline lead, short hook link. You know, it's literally with the idea that the fish comes over, bang, it's hooked. Because the problem with clean spots is I've seen it time and time again. Those fish are coming over there, you'll get a big sheet up, loads of fizzing, and nothing happens. No beat, nothing, but you know full well they've done you. And so trying to, you know, make sure that doesn't happen, because it did work the last time. The other rod, I gave it a little bit more flexibility with a leg clip and a heady lead with just a ring. I've mentioned this before in previous films, so not as much movement as, say, a swivel and the loop that you get on the lead, because I was kind of like looking at that and thinking, as the way that moves, I think that's just got a little bit too much movement for my liking. But I preferred that sort of thing with it being a slightly smaller hole in the weed. Thought it just gives me a little bit more movement how that's sitting. And both of them attached to sort of lead-free, the thick 65-pound lead-free Camflex leader by Gardner, which is so supple, and it doesn't need to, that way it's not going to cut through any sort of, not going to stick up like traditional lead core can if you're sort of fishing holes in the weeds. So I just prefer that sort of thing at the moment. It's working well for me. First night, nothing, you know, nothing at all. Didn't see a thing. Not all night. I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning, looking. Felt, you know, got the enthusiasm for a bite. Thinking I'm fishing for big fish. New moon. It's that area. it's done bites down there, and that's hard to take, you know, when you're hearing bites coming out. Oh, so-and-so's had one, so-and-so's had 29 from so-and-so's had 8, and you think, oh God, it could, because you're not mixing it. But there's got to be fish in this area. I know there's fish in this area, and I know they're not all going to go down there. So for some reason, I'd lost the lead that I was using, and I looked in my bag, and I'd already been to the car, by the way, to go and get some provisions and that from the shop and whatever for another night. And for some reason, I couldn't find this lead. And it's just, as I said, it's a little a 4-ounce little ring on it, lovely. So the rig mechanic's perfect for what I was trying to do, with stiff link, and I was also using a hinge stiff rig on it. Now, that is it, because I was just using boilie. I don't mind that, even on a hard spot. It's a big fish rig. We've gone about it, everyone, you know, has gone about it in the has talked about it in the past, that these particular type of rigs, as boring as some people think they are, and I know, because you want to be trying to tell you to do something different, and you know, we all like playing with something that's got an edge over him over there, but it's just a big fish rig. And the reason being, I think, because of is the way that some certain big fish feed. You know, they don't necessarily always get their heads right at the bottom like smaller fish do. Bellies maybe, you might think, what is this guy talking about? But we used to have it on the lake that I'm fishing now, behind me, in that we had a very, very big fish, a famous big fish. And he actually grazed the front of his undercarriage, whatever you want to call it, where he was feeding. Could never quite get all the way down, never got his mouth right down on the bottom, but it was happy sort of coming along here and picking things up and sucking things up. So, you know, you got baits and then just throwing them up in the air. I'm not a massive fan using a hinge when you've got sort of a particle bed, but if you're just using boilie and chops, or you know, halves like I was, the rig comes into its own. So I was happy using that rig on a rock hard bottom. But the lead, as I said, I've lost this lead, and I've had to go into my bag and look for it, and all I've got is a lead with a great big long ring, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not really happy with it. But I just kind of said, look, it'll be fine, rather than walk back to the car, try and find some, and you know, it'll be fine. And I put I put that lead on, you know, like a 4-ounce lead, and so I had like probably half the amount of confidence on that rod as I did on the other. And when I woke up the next morning with nothing going on, and it was entirely dead out in the lake, and I've had a call that I've needed to take, and I'm on the call for quite a bit, chatting away. But I had full intentions of reeling the rods in, going back to the car at another night, go back to the car, try and find some leads that I needed, and get the stuff to do the rigs properly. I was even sort of saying I'd probably come off the hinge rigs or whatever, and change it all, just, you know, regardless, even though I wasn't too sure there was any fish that were out there. But I'm sitting in nattering on the phone, and it's now getting to late morning, and I would have reeled in. I would have gone. I would have, you know, I would have gone back to Carlo and changed things. And yeah, the right hand rod has just done a tenchy twitch, beep beep, beep beep, and it's sort of, the bobbin's going up and down a bit, very, very tenchy. And I'm on the phone, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to, yeah, I'm gonna have to, and it's sort of still dancing around, just nothing, just tiptoeing. And I'm like, right, sorry mate, I'm gonna have to go. I'll have to call you back. At that point, when I've literally said I'm gonna have to call back and press the ring, all it's done is the tip has just pulled round, and it has pulled out the clip. I was like, okay, and literally I've just pulled into a weight, just a dead weight, and I'm not gonna, you know, with any sort of big fish or character fish, you want me to now say what an amazing fight and it stripped off 90 yards of line across to the other side. No, triple row does that, and I know Darren's Lynn does that. But this fish just didn't do much at all. It sort of got a bit of weed over its head, shook that off, did a little bit of ploughing up the margins, and I've done the right thing, managed to get the waders on, so I'm out, because you need to wade out literally in every swim at Dinton. I've waded out, I've got it, and then, as any carp angler will know, when you see a very broad, old, wrinkly black back, then your legs start to go a little bit, because you know it's not a young un. You know it's a big un, it's something, it's one of them. And that's all I've got. The lead's done its job, the lead has flung off, and the lead that I've completely criticised has done its job perfectly. But it's rolling around, and I know it's big, I know it's a unit. There's no one around me anywhere. And you know, it's done a couple of little ploughs and whatnot, but I'm not going to try and dramatise it from it being something that it's not. I've literally got it in the net, and then you sort of do the roll on the side, and then you try and keep your wits about you, whilst letting out a cry that only carp anglers can hear. And my mate Dan Wilcox is down the end, and he said, "I heard somebody crying, sounded like they were in trouble." Yeah, it's the most amazing feeling ever. That is, I never went on about the Jaffa or Son of Triple Row like some of my friends have down there. They are obsessed by it. I'm not saying I'm not obsessed by it, but when you're up against that amount of brilliant anglers on that lake, it could come out to anybody. And when these fish come out a couple of times a year, you know, you've just got to be at the right time, the right place, and just hope your time will come, because every one of those guys, you know, has an opportunity to catch that fish. I've not seen many that have graced those banks that are not able to catch the best fish in the lake. They're all very, very accomplished anglers. So to get your turn is just unbelievable. And you just have to kind of pinch yourself and think, well, you know, that's, you know, for once I've had a bit of luck, and I've had my bad bit of luck on there as well as everybody else has. But you know, you take these opportunities and you live to tell the tale. It's you know, it's a great experience. Then you just go into panic mode, didn't you? But I was so lucky that, you know, I rang Dan, and you know, one of the top blokes you'll ever wish to meet is Dan down there. And he's brilliant with a camera as well. And I was like, you know, I'm lucky I've got a couple of mates down there. And he said, oh, I've got somebody who might be able to help out. And funny enough, Scotty K was down in Plumbers, and he'd had one the day before. And just he was sort of coming over for a bit of getting away from it all and sort of hanging away from black and whatever, and fair play to him. So Scotty K was there. Well, his main man at Sticky is Joe Brazil, and he's there, and Joe is just, if you're fishing a lake where Joe's on, you know, you're a lucky man, because I'm fortunate enough to have Joe around when I caught a fish in the autumn on Dinton, and the pictures are on my wall in my man cave, and so I was kind of like, let alone having Son of Triple Row in the net, I've got Joe coming up here able to do the footage that you're able to see and take the most amazing pictures. And yeah, we did everything on the bank, and the other thing I was so lucky about was that there weren't any public there. So I know it's hard, but when you've got a big fish on a public lake and you get a load of dog walkers come down, and you don't want to be rude, but they sort of say that, you know what it's like. They sort of say, oh, you're going to have chips with that? Yeah, go chips with that. Is that a big one, is it? Yeah, it's quite big, yeah. Oh, well done, you know, it's lovely in that, but you know exactly what I mean. It's just, you know, you just want to be with your mates that can completely respect, you know, seeing such an amazing thing on the bank as I had. I'd seen Notty That's the only time I'd actually seen Son of Triple Row on the bank was with Notty. Although Mickey had had it a few years ago, I never got to see it. So, you know, to get to see this thing is incredible. We didn't mess around with Jaffa. Literally, as I netted it, the boys came up really quickly. We got it, you know, we got it photographed. And even as I had it on the bank, Joe said, "Are you going to weigh it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, completely forgot about that." It just, you know, it's the sort of fish I really just didn't give a stuff about what its weight was. It went 45, 15. But it was immaterial. You know, it's that sort of fish. But it's the most bizarre creature as well. When you net it, it tends to go up and starts going up, belly up on you. So there's no way you'll want to retain that fish for any length of time. It's just, you know, literally let it recover in the net as we did, get it back into its home, and just enjoy the party afterwards, which is exactly what we did.